Float by Laura Martin. Chapter 1. A white SUV pulled into the parking lot and I eyed it speculatively. It was definitely a contender. It had a big trunk, which was important since I didn't really like the idea of cramming myself into something as small as a Volkswagen Beetle, especially if I was going to be stuck inside it for more than a few hours. I wrinkled my nose at the thought, even though I knew full well that a bumpy ride in a stuffy trunk was preferable to what was ahead of me. I needed to find the right car, and soon. "Stop staring," my mom snapped from behind me, pulling my focus away from the red minivan that was about to turn into the lot. "I'm not staring," I mumbled without taking my eyes off the car. "I'm weighing my options." "We've been over this," she sniffed, and I heard her shift her weight nervously as her high heels sank farther into the soft ground. "You don't have any options. You'll just have to make the best of it." I glanced over my shoulder at her as the minivan passed us, but my mom wasn't even looking at me. Instead, she was looking around at the other families climbing out of their cars, staring in the exact way she'd just told me not to. I almost threw her own words back at her, but swallowed them at the last second and scowled down at the ground instead. Someone had mowed the grass recently in this field-turned-temporary parking lot, and the toes of my stupid shoes were stained green. I scuffed at the dirt to try to wipe off some of the grass stains, but only managed to get chunks of grass in the shoe's steel seams. Giving up, I glanced back at my mom. She was eyeballing a black SUV that had just pulled into the parking lot, and I squinted at the official-looking logo painted across its side. There were so many different divisions of government involved in risk services, it was hard to keep track of them all, but I was fairly certain I'd never heard of the TTBI, and from the "don't mess with me or I'll kill you" scowl on the guy's face behind the wheel, I decided that was a good thing. For the first time, I was grateful that my mom had insisted on dropping me off herself. I was a level 5 after all. She could have pushed me off on caseworker like that kid's parents obviously had. My mom was still staring, and I cleared my throat, eyebrows raised. She jumped guiltily, shoving her oversized sunglasses back up her nose and smiling the too bright smile she gave police officers when they pulled her over for speeding. She wasn't fooling anyone. Her nervous, fluttery hands found their way to my tie for the 7th time that morning, fiddling with it until it felt like a mini pinstripe hangman's noose. I tried to tell her that no one wore a tie to summer camp registration, but I'd been ignored. So now I was standing in the makeshift parking lot looking like a complete idiot as my mom's guilty smile melted off her face in the humidity. On second thought, maybe a ride from a government official wouldn't have been so bad. A mosquito buzzed obnoxiously near my ear and I slapped at it unsuccessfully. If the world were still survival of the fittest, I wouldn't last past breakfast, which was why hitching a ride out of here in someone's trunk was one of my better ideas. My mom interrupted my pathetic plotting by handing me my large, blue duffel bag and backpack. Her over hairsprayed hair barely budged in the muggy breeze. She gave my shoulder a squeeze and did her level best to look reassuring. She failed miserably, and I reluctantly gave up the car idea. The last thing I needed was to cause her to have a nervous breakdown. Again. I sighed. I probably wouldn't have had the guts to go through with it anyway. Other kids, accompanied by an odd assortment of parents and uniformed officials, were filing past us with their own duffel bags and sleeping bags in tow. I squared my shoulders. If I was going to go through with this camp nightmare, maybe I could at least avoid looking like a complete goober and register myself. "You know, Mom," I tried, making a mental note to ditch the tie if this worked, "I can take it from here. I wouldn't want you to hit rush hour traffic on the drive home." "Now, Emerson, don't be like that," she scolded. "I know this place is supposed to specialize in accommodating risk kids, but I still won't sleep tonight unless I talk to your counselor myself." My mother wobbled away on her apple-red heels toward the cabin, proudly displaying a sign that read, "Welcome to Camp Outlier." What a stupid name. Whoever named the camp probably did it to be funny or witty or something. It wasn't. I glared up at the sign as something hard and ugly tightened in my chest. The last thing I needed was to be reminded that I wasn't like everyone else. Might as well have said, "Welcome to Camp Outsider." "This place is like the kid equivalent of sending Grandma to a nursing home," I grumbled. "You think so?" quipped a voice at my elbow. "I thought it was a lot more like the kid equivalent of a zoo, except no one would pay money to watch us sleep." A blond kid with green eyes and a hooked nose stood staring up at the sign that I'd just been scrutinizing. He had a thin, stretched look to him that reminded me of spaghetti and a wide-set mouth built for smirking, which was exactly what he was doing. "Have you ever noticed that about the zoo?" he went on, unfazed by my lack of response. "All the animals are either hiding or sleeping in the one spot you can't see them. We go every year, and I've seen the same lion's left butt cheek like 10 times. But whatever. Nursing home isn't a bad comparison as far as comparisons go. Although my Nana got kicked out of hers for throwing a party where 3 people partied so hard they broke their hips. Think they kick you out of there? Think they kick you out for that here too? He finally looked away from the sign and grinned at me, thrusting out a hand. I'm Henry, but everyone calls me Hank. I stared at his offered hand stupidly. The last time I checked, 12-year-olds didn't shake. After another second's hesitation, I reached for it anyway, but before I could grab his hand, it flickered. A second later, it disappeared entirely. Yelping in surprise, I jumped backward. Inconvenient invisibility, a level 4. Hank shrugged unapologetically. Although you probably assumed that, seeing as how you have to be at least a level 3 wrist to end up here, he said, jerking his head toward the sign. Inconvenient invisibility, I repeated, trying to remember if I'd ever met anyone with that particular risk factor before. Hank waved a hand dismissively. Some days I'm completely invisible. Other days I'm not. Today I'm somewhere in the middle, which is stinking lucky. Have you ever tried to introduce yourself to someone when they can't see your head? No, I said, not quite sure what to make of this kid. He shook his head. Don't. It involves a lot of screaming and fainting. Not the kind of first impression I like to make. I'm Emerson, I said, shaking a hand that wasn't there. It felt weird, so I pulled mine back quickly. Hank didn't seem to notice, as he was too busy looking me over. With those killer shoes and the weighted vest, I'm guessing you're a level 3, he asked. I shook my head and looked down at my feet, which were indeed encased in killer shoes. The thick rubber and metal combo was covered in grass stains and mud, and I noticed one of the laces had wound its way up. Most of my shin had come loose. I bent to fix it, hoping my face wouldn't turn red, but from the way my ears were burning, I knew it had. The stupid things had been modeled after normal shoes, but they weren't fooling anyone. The weighted vest I wore was also impossible to disguise, but it looked slightly less ridiculous than the shoes, so that was something. Let me guess, Hank mused as he circled me, his hand propped on his flickering chin. A flyer? Level 4? I shook my hand again. That was always everyone's first guess. Level 5 floater. Hank whistled in appreciation at the level, and I shrugged. I guess if you have to be a freak, being the freakiest of the freaks isn't a bad way to go. Seriously, though, Hank asked, how do you screw up floating so bad they assign you a level 5? I thought they only handed that out to kids that, like, torch stuff or implode or something. No offense, but floating seems pretty straightforward. He didn't say it, but the implication was there. Floating seemed tame, fluffy even. Like if my risk factor were an animal, it would be a bunny. It wasn't a bunny. I shrugged. Well, an inability to stop myself from floating straight to the moon is a good start. The level is because of danger to self, not dangers to others. I decided now wasn't the time to mention that I was also terrified of heights, and I puked if I got much farther than a couple feet off the ground. Being a floater was lame enough, thanks. Hank hooted with laughter. I frowned, disappointed, even though I'd known it was coming. So this kid was jerked too. Real nice. I was just turning to leave when Hank slapped his semi-invisible hand down on my shoulder. Sorry, man, he grinned. It's just nice to meet someone more screwed up than me. Doesn't happen much, you know? I frowned at him for a second, but his laughing green eyes were earnest, and his ears chose that exact moment to disappear. I smiled in spite of myself. I'm glad I could help. A loud wail came from the parking lot behind us, and we both turned to take in a glossy red sports car and the chaos surrounding it. A short boy with floppy gold hair had both of his palms pressed flat against the driver's side door, while a man, presumably his father, had him around the waist and was attempting to peel him off. It wasn't going well. That kid seems thrilled to be here, Hank drawled. I kind of admire him, I admitted, thinking of my own abandoned plan to cram myself into some unsuspecting soccer mom trunk. I think we're all doing that on the inside, because we don't have the guts to do it on the outside. Speak for your own guts. Mine are made of steel, or rock, or whatever makes someone phenomenally gutsy. Hank paused, considering. I think steel guts sound better, don't you? Rock guts make it sound like I have a problem. Anyhow, my point is, if I wanted to pitch a fit, I would, but I already decided this summer is going to be incredible. You do realize we're at Camp Outlier, right? I asked. The only reason kids come here is because the government required it. Although, I sighed, I think my mom would have sent me even if that letter hadn't shown up. She's gotten so twitchy about me lately that her doctor made her take up yoga. I wasn't pumped at first, Hank admitted. Shoot, I was so mad when my parents said I had to come that I went invisible on them for 3 whole days. It was a new record for me. Wow, I said, impressed. What happened? I flickered and became visible right as I was raiding the pantry. Hank winced at the memory. Of course, I was naked, and my mom's book group got a good look at the Roberts family jewels. I snorted. You were naked? As a streaker at a European football game. Do you normally walk around your house naked? Well, my clothes don't disappear when I do, Hank explained, as though this were obvious. I would have been caught in 2 seconds if just my pants and shirt had been parading around. Anyway, I decided that since I can't avoid this place, I'm going to make it awesome, just like I did when I became visible in front of the book club. Instead of slinking away, I did an Irish jig, took a bow, made sure I grabbed the potato chips on my way out. I'm sure that went over well. Hank shrugged. 2 of the ladies actually applauded. Personally, I think they must have gotten the best view. My mom is now officially banned from hosting book club. Dad was thrilled. He hates book club night more than donuts hate diets. That's it? I asked skeptically. You just decided it would be awesome, so now it will be? There was a fine line between being nuts and brilliant, and Hank seemed to be straddling it.